Welcome, curious minds, to the deep dive. So today we're plunging into a topic that affects, well, millions globally. It's incredibly complex: schizophrenia. Did you know, and this is quite staggering, that this debilitating psychological disease impacts around 24 million individuals worldwide?
That's a huge number, about 1 in 300 people on the planet.
Roughly 1 in 300, exactly. And tragically, that number actually rises for adolescents and young adults, affecting about 1 in 222 in that group.
It's really quite stark when you put it like that.
It is. And just imagine for a moment the profound impact of a condition like this. We're talking symptoms like delusions, vivid hallucinations, really disoriented speech, and profoundly confused thinking.
It really disrupts daily life in fundamental ways.
Absolutely. And it often leads to severe interference with daily living, resulting in, widespread discrimination, abuse, and just heartbreaking isolation.
It's a truly challenging condition, no doubt about it. And the traditional methods for diagnosing such complex psychological diseases, well, they're absolutely essential, of course. They're performed by highly skilled practitioners. But unfortunately, they face significant hurdles.
What kind of hurdles are we talking about?
Well, for starters, they're often very time-consuming. It's not a quick process. They can also be highly subjective, relying heavily on interpretation.
Right. Different clinicians might see things slightly differently.
Precisely. And they demand incredibly specialized expertise, which isn't always available everywhere. This can, and frequently does, lead to delays in critical intervention.
And for conditions like schizophrenia, we know that early intervention can make, well, all the difference.
A huge difference.
That's exactly it. That bottleneck, that potential delay, is where our deep dive truly begins today. Because while these manual methods have been, the backbone of diagnosis for decades, a powerful new ally is stepping into the ring: technology.
AI specifically.
Specifically, artificial intelligence and advanced machine learning techniques. These are now being harnessed to support and really augment the capabilities of medical practitioners. Today, we're going to unpack a groundbreaking research paper. It unveils how a new AI-driven approach using electroencephalogram signals, that's EEG, is achieving really unprecedented accuracy in detecting schizophrenia.
And that accuracy level is key here.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
This isn't just some incremental improvement we're talking about. This could absolutely transform early diagnosis and treatment, offering, a real beacon of hope for patients and clinicians alike.
It's potentially revolutionary.
So get ready, because this is where it truly gets fascinating. We're about to give you a shortcut to understanding the cutting edge of mental health diagnostics. Let's dive in. So to start, let's really try to grasp the scale of schizophrenia, and crucially, why a better, faster, and more objective diagnostic method is just so critically needed.
We touched on the numbers, but it bears repeating.
Yeah, those staggering numbers: 24 million people globally.
Which represents, what, 0.33% of the world's population?
Exactly. And as we noted, that jumps to 0.45% in adolescents and young adults.
And it's vital to remember these aren't just statistics.
No, definitely not. This isn't just a number on a page. It represents countless individual lives, families, profoundly impacted, grappling with a condition that can fundamentally alter their perception of reality.
And what's deeply insightful here, beyond just the sheer prevalence, is the debilitating nature of schizophrenia. It affects a person's thinking processes, their concentration, their overall behavior in really profound ways. Those severe neurological symptoms you mentioned earlier, the delusions, the hallucinations, they aren't just abstract clinical markers. They disrupt nearly every single aspect of a person's life.
Like what, specifically?
Well, think about the direct consequences. A person might struggle immensely to hold down a job or maintain relationships. Even manage basic daily tasks can become overwhelming.
That's incredibly tough.
And then, layered on top of that, you often have significant social challenges that compound the clinical symptoms. Pervasive discrimination is a huge issue.
Yeah, the stigma is still very real.
Absolutely. And the potential for abuse due to vulnerability. And then there's the overwhelming loneliness that frequently accompanies this condition. It isolates individuals precisely when what they often need most is support, understanding, and connection.
And that profound human impact connects directly to why this matters so much for you, our listener, and for patients everywhere. While schizophrenia is understood to be, a long-lasting condition, often requiring ongoing management, the World Health Organization offers a critical beacon of hope.
That's right. They state it's indeed curable.
Curable, which is a powerful word here.
With good treatment and, crucially, early diagnosis.
That early diagnosis part seems key.
It's paramount. The impact of getting in there early, providing intervention at the earliest possible stage, it's truly profound on a patient's lifestyle. Early support can help individuals navigate and even overcome really negative thought patterns, including, unfortunately, suicidal or homicidal ideations that can tragically arise from the condition.
Wow. So imagine for a moment getting a diagnosis years earlier than might happen now. That could literally change the entire trajectory of someone's life.
Absolutely. It could prevent a whole cascade of secondary problems, homelessness, substance abuse, further social isolation, and dramatically improve the overall quality of life.
Okay, so this undeniable need for early, accurate diagnosis, it really raises an important question. How exactly is schizophrenia diagnosed right now? What are the inherent limitations of those current methods?
Right. The prevailing process, as I mentioned, is quite manual. It relies very heavily on human expertise. Highly skilled medical practitioners meticulously review and interpret a combination of things: clinical observations, detailed patient interviews, family history.
And sometimes EEG data, too.
Sometimes, yes, EEG data is part of the picture, but the interpretation is still largely manual. If sufficient symptoms are verified and other conditions are ruled out, then further studies and treatment pathways are initiated. It's a process built on careful observation, detailed history taking, and the cumulative knowledge of experienced clinicians.
But, as you can imagine, relying solely on manual interpretation, even with the most skilled and dedicated practitioner, it comes with significant drawbacks, doesn't it? Especially for something as subtle and complex as schizophrenia.
It really does.
Yeah.
First, as we touched on, it's incredibly challenging to pinpoint consistently. The subjective nature means that two equally skilled neurologists might interpret the same presentation, the same data, slightly differently.
They might emphasize different aspects.
Exactly, or weigh certain symptoms more heavily than others. Second, it's inherently time-consuming. The comprehensive assessment required can stretch over weeks, sometimes months. It involves multiple appointments, careful review of records, ruling out other possibilities. Third, it's labor-intensive and demands highly specialized knowledge. This limits the number of qualified individuals who can perform these diagnoses accurately.
Which means access to timely diagnosis can be severely constrained, right?
Yeah.
Especially in certain regions or healthcare systems.
Precisely. And all these factors combined, the subjectivity, the time, specialized need, often lead to delays in intervention, which, as we just discussed, can tragically worsen disease progression and diminish the effectiveness of treatment down the line.
It's a critical bottleneck, a real barrier in getting people the help they need exactly when they need it most.
And this is exactly the gap that technology, specifically AI, is aiming to fill. We're talking about the urgent necessity of developing an alternative, automated approach, something that can provide objective, high-accuracy support to neurologists right at the outset of an EEG study or even as part of the initial assessment.
Objective and high-accuracy support.
Yes. By systematically addressing the issues of subjectivity inherent in human interpretation and the sheer time consumption of manual processes, such a system could dramatically streamline the diagnostic pathway.
Make it more efficient.
More objective, more efficient, and ultimately far more accessible for patients globally.
Especially in underserved regions, you mentioned.
Absolutely. The goal isn't to replace human experts. Let's be clear about that.
Right, it's augmentation, not replacement.
Precisely. It's about empowering clinicians with better, faster, more reliable tools.
Okay, so with that critical need established, the immense global burden, the limitations of current diagnostics, let's talk about the key tool. The tool at the heart of this innovation, EEG. The electroencephalogram. You called it the brain's electrical symphony, capturing those firing patterns. And researchers are finding it holds immense diagnostic potential. But why EEG? Why is it consistently the preferred tool for this kind of research?
Yeah.
We hear about MRI, fMRI, PET scans.
That's a great question. And what's truly fascinating here is EEG's unique constellation of advantages, especially for this application. Unlike technologies like MRI or CT scans or fMRI or PET scans, EEG is fundamentally non-invasive.
Non-invasive meaning?
Meaning there's no radiation exposure like with CT scans. There's no need for strong magnetic fields like MRI, no injections of radioactive tracers like PET. It simply involves placing electrodes on the scalp to passively listen to the brain's electrical signals.
Okay, so it's safe and comfortable for patients.
Incredibly safe and comfortable, yes. Even for repeated measurements, which is often necessary. And crucially, it's also moderately priced compared to the often prohibitive costs of those other advanced imaging techniques.
Ah, the cost factor. That's huge for accessibility.
It is, and it's remarkably practical for routine clinical settings. You don't need a massive shielded room like you do for an MRI. It can even be used in more resource-limited environments.
So non-invasive, cost-effective, practical.
Exactly. Those characteristics make it the preferred method for diagnosing conditions like schizophrenia, especially when compared to other, more expensive or less accessible imaging options. Essentially, it allows us to listen in on the brain's electrical activity in a very direct, real-time, and practical way.
Right, so we're listening to the brain's electrical whispers, trying to find patterns. But for listeners who might not be brainwave experts, what exactly are these EEG signals? We hear about frequencies, right?
Right.
Typically ranging from zero point 0.1 to 100 hertz. But how do we take that raw electrical symphony and break it down into something meaningful, something a doctor or, an AI can actually understand?
That's the core challenge, isn't it? To truly understand EEG, we need to appreciate that the brain's electrical activity isn't just a single uniform hum. It's actually composed of different rhythms or frequency bands.
Like instruments in an orchestra.
Exactly like instruments. Much like a complex piece of music is made up of different instruments playing at various tempos. Each of these 5 primary frequency bands tells us something distinct about what the brain is doing, reflecting different states of consciousness and cognitive processes.
Okay, break those down for us. What are the main bands?
Right. First, we have delta waves. These are the slowest and largest brain waves, typically ranging from 0.5 to 4 hertz. Think deep, slow bass notes. They're prominently associated with deep, restorative sleep, unconscious bodily processes. And interestingly, they can also indicate significant cognitive load or certain neurological issues if they pop up when someone's awake.
Okay, delta is deep sleep. What's next?
Next, we move up to theta waves, operating between 4 and 8 hertz. These are often linked to states of drowsiness, the early stages of sleep, meditation, and also memory processing. They tend to be more prominent when someone is in a relaxed, daydreaming state, or maybe engaged in tasks requiring internal focus.
So a bit faster, more related to drowsiness and memory.
Then come alpha waves, from 8 to 12 hertz. These are perhaps the most commonly recognized. They indicate a relaxed, wakeful state, often strongest when your eyes are closed but you're not asleep. Prominent during moments of calm alertness, maybe creative flow, and they also play a role in memory consolidation.
That calm, steady rhythm when you're relaxed but aware. Got it.
Exactly. Following that, we have beta waves, which are faster, ranging from 12 to 30 hertz. These are the active waves associated with our normal waking consciousness. Active thinking, problem solving, focused attention, motor control. When you're engaged, alert, concentrating, your brain is typically producing beta waves.
Beta is our busy brainwave.
In a sense, yes. And the study we're discussing even further subdivides beta into low beta and high beta, particularly when using specific analysis techniques like DWT, allowing for even finer analysis of these active states.
Okay, and the last one.
Finally, there are gamma waves, the fastest oscillations, typically considered from 30 hertz up to about 45 hertz, or even higher in some definitions. These are thought to be crucial for higher-level cognitive processing, things like integrating information from different brain regions, sensory perception, intense attention, learning. They're often seen during moments of peak concentration, problem-solving, or even those aha moments of insight.
The complex, rapid flourishes of the brain's orchestra.
A perfect way to put it.
So, if these are the normal rhythms, the healthy symphony of the brain, how do deviations from these patterns connect to schizophrenia? Because, as we know, the exact singular cause of schizophrenia isn't fully understood, right? It's complex.
That's absolutely correct. The precise cause remains elusive, likely a complex interplay of genetic predispositions and environmental factors. However, what is widely accepted is that anomalies in brain structure, and crucially for EEG, brain function, are believed to contribute significantly to its development.
And those functional anomalies show up in the EEG.
Exactly. They are directly reflected in subtle or sometimes quite profound shifts and abnormalities within these specific EEG frequency patterns. By meticulously analyzing deviations, whether it's unusual power levels in a certain band, like too much slow wave activity during wakefulness, or maybe a lack of synchronization or coherence between different brain regions, Researchers can gain insights into the disrupted neural processes characteristic of schizophrenia.
So it's about identifying the wrong notes.
The wrong notes, the off rhythms, maybe unexpected silences, or even just generally disorganized patterns in the brain's electrical symphony. These patterns hint at the underlying neurological disorganization. For example, some studies have shown altered alpha and gamma power in SZ patients, suggesting issues with things like attention and how the brain processes information.
That makes perfect sense. And this isn't the first time researchers have tried to leverage this kind of brain activity, is it? Can you give us a quick glimpse into previous research in automated diagnosis? How has this field evolved, and what challenges did earlier attempts face?
Absolutely. The quest for automated diagnostic tools using EEG isn't new. It's been evolving for decades. There's been a clear and recently accelerating trend towards integrating more sophisticated deep learning algorithms and advanced signal processing techniques directly with EEG recordings. The overarching goal, as we discussed, is always to overcome the inherent drawbacks of traditional manual diagnosis, the subjectivity, the time, the need for specialized expertise.
But it hasn't been smooth sailing, I imagine.
Far from it.
Huh.
Early attempts, while foundational, often faced significant challenges that really limited their clinical utility. For example, some initial models might have used simpler statistical methods that just couldn't capture the incredibly complex, nonlinear, and nuanced patterns in brainwaves.
Leading to lower accuracy.
Exactly. You might see diagnostic accuracies in the 70–80% range, which, while a step forward from chance, often isn't high enough for reliable clinical use. Misdiagnosis has serious consequences.
Right.
A critical issue, which this paper and previous research really highlight, was often poor performance when incorrect feature sets were chosen.
Feature sets, you mean the specific bits of information they tried to extract from the EEG?
Precisely. Imagine trying to identify a specific type of bird just by its color. Color is a feature, but it's not very discriminatory on its own, right?
Mm-hmm. Lots of birds share colors.
Exactly. Similarly, early models might have focused on broad, maybe obvious brainwave patterns when the real telltale signs of schizophrenia were much more subtle. They might have required a different, more sophisticated way to extract meaningful information from the raw signals.
Like focusing on the wrong instrument in the orchestra.
That's a good analogy. Or maybe they focused on the average volume amplitude, when the critical information lay in the variability or the extreme notes, min-max values, of the signal. Or another common pitfall. They might have employed powerful machine learning models, but without adequately cleaning the data first.
The garbage in, garbage out problem.
Precisely. If the input data is noisy or full of artifacts, even the smartest AI will struggle. Noise can easily overwhelm any genuine patterns. So this really underscores the vital and intricate interaction between how you extract meaningful information, the feature extraction, and the classification model you ultimately use to interpret that information.
They have to work together perfectly.
They do. This really sets the stage for how this new study aims to surpass these prior limitations. They meticulously selected and optimized both the feature extraction method, DWT, and the classification model, MLP, learning from the hard-won challenges faced by their predecessors. They were searching for that perfect synergy between the right features and the right classifier.
Okay, let's really unpack this. This is where we get into the nuts and bolts of the new system itself. Researchers call it the DWT-MLP system. Sounds technical, but you said the brilliance lies in its elegant workflow. What's the overall vision for this automated approach?
Right. The DWT-MLP-based schizophrenia detection system. It's conceptualized as a powerful, automated, computer-aided detection method, CAD, basically, designed to provide objective and, crucially, highly accurate EEG signal-based schizophrenia detection. Its core idea is quite elegant in how it combines two powerful techniques. It leverages Discrete Wavelet Transform, or DWT, for sophisticated and efficient feature extraction from the raw EEG.
Okay, DWT gets the important bits out.
Exactly. And then it feeds those highly refined features into a multi-layer perceptron, or MLP, which is a foundational type of deep learning model for the classification step deciding schizophrenia or healthy control.
So the vision is like a smart assistant for the clinician.
Precisely, offering a reliable and rapid second opinion right at the start of a diagnostic process, dramatically improving efficiency and reducing that subjectivity we talked about.
So how does this system actually work in practice? Walk us through the steps. What's the logical, organized workflow it follows to go from raw brainwaves to that potential diagnostic output, ensuring accuracy and efficiency?
It follows a very systematic, logical workflow. Think of it like a carefully constructed assembly line for brain data. It begins, naturally, with dataset collection. As we said, absolutely foundational. You need good, clean data.
Garbage in, garbage out otherwise.
Exactly. Once the raw data is acquired, it undergoes rigorous signal pre-processing. This is that crucial cleaning and preparation step, removing unwanted noise and artifacts. Gotta get pristine signals.
Okay, clean signals first.
After the signals are clean, the system moves to feature extraction from these pristine EEG signals. This is where the discrete wavelet transform works its magic, breaking down the complex brainwave patterns into quantifiable, meaningful features.
Extracting the symphony's key elements.
You got it. Finally, these meticulously extracted features are fed into the classification stage, which is handled by the multi-layer perceptron. It makes the binary decision. Is this pattern indicative of schizophrenia or of a healthy control? This entire workflow is designed end-to-end to ensure highly accurate and efficient data screening, providing a streamlined and objective path from raw brain data to a potential diagnostic insight.
And speaking of data, you mentioned that's often the biggest hurdle in these kinds of sophisticated AI studies, finding good, clean, representative EEG datasets. Where did the researchers get the data for this groundbreaking system, and what were the key characteristics?
You're absolutely right. Data collection is a major challenge. The quality, the size, the diversity of the training data, it all directly impacts the model's performance and how well it generalizes to new patients. For this study, the researchers made a very smart choice. They utilized two distinct, publicly available data sets.
Using two different ones is good for robustness,
Yeah.
right? It shows it's not just a fluke on one set.
Exactly. It really adds to the robustness and the reproducibility of their findings. It shows their model performs well across different patient groups and different recording conditions.
Okay, tell us with the first one, dataset 1.
So Dataset 1, or DS1, was sourced from the CADL platform, a well-known repository for datasets. It actually originated from a National Institute of Mental Health project. This dataset is quite comprehensive for an EEG study. It comprises data from 81 subjects, specifically 32 healthy controls HC and 49 schizophrenia patients SZ.
Okay, decent numbers. What about demographics?
The subjects had an average age of 39, and there was a majority male composition, 67 men and 14 women. The data itself was collected while subjects performed basic sensory tasks. And the researchers specifically selected data from Condition 1, which involved the subject pressing a button to generate a tone.
Why that specific task?
It was chosen strategically because previous analysis has shown significant differences in EEG signal amplitude between the healthy controls and schizophrenia patients during that specific task, making it a promising signal for distinguishing between the two groups.
Makes sense. And the technical details. Channels, sampling rate.
Right. For each subject, data was collected from 70 EEG channels initially. But for their specific study, they focused on a subset of 10 channels, primarily over the frontal and frontocentral regions, which are often implicated in schizophrenia.
Which channels were those?
The channels were FP1, AF7, AF3, F1, F3, F5, F7, FT7, FC5, and FC3. And these signals were recorded at a high sampling rate of 124 Hz for 3 seconds per trial, capturing a really rich, detailed snapshot of brain activity.
Wow, 424 samples per second. That is detailed. Okay, what about the second data set, DS2?
The second dataset, Dataset 2 or DF2, came from the Institute of Psychiatry and Neurology in Warsaw, Poland. It's a smaller dataset in terms of subject count, but equally valuable. It consisted of 28 subjects, perfectly balanced, 14 healthy controls, and 14 schizophrenia patients.
Matched for age and gender, you mentioned.
Yes. Very importantly, this group was carefully matched for age and gender. This is crucial for minimizing confounding variables. It helps ensure that any differences observed are more likely due to the condition itself, not just age or gender differences between the groups.
And the recording conditions were different here.
Slightly different, yes. For this dataset, participants remained relaxed with their eyes closed for 15 minutes per session, so a resting state recording. EEG signals were acquired from 19 channels, a broader array than DS1, covering more of the scalp.
Which channels specifically?
These included FP1, FP2, F7, F3, F3, F8, F4, F8, T3, C3, CC, C4, T4, T3, P3, P4, T6, O1, and O2, standard 10/20 layout, and these were sampled at 250 Hz. A lower sampling rate than DS1, but still perfectly adequate for capturing the relevant frequency bands.
And you mentioned standardization was key across both.
Absolutely essential. Both datasets utilize the International 1020 Positioning System for electrode placement. This is the global standard for EEG, ensuring consistency in where electrodes are placed on the scalp makes data comparable across studies.
Right, so an electrode labeled FP1 is in the same place in Poland as it is in the U.S. study.
Exactly. And they also maintain consistent reference electrodes. This meticulous attention to data collection and standardization across different sources is fundamental. It's what you need for training a robust AI model that isn't just good at spotting patterns in one specific dataset, but can actually generalize to new, unseen data from different clinics, different machines, which is essential for real-world clinical application.
Okay, so they've gathered all this raw electrical activity from two different well-characterized sources.
Yeah.
But I imagine it's not always clean, perfect data coming straight off the scalp, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned pre-processing earlier. Why is that step so incredibly crucial? What kind of mess are we talking about?
You're spot on. Raw EEG recordings are inherently messy. They are incredibly prone to various types of artifacts. These are unwanted signals that aren't coming directly from the brain's neural activity.
Like what sort of things?
Oh, all sorts. Something as simple as the patient blinking that generates a big electrical potential near the eyes. Clenching their jaw, swallowing, slight head movements, even subtle posture changes.
Things people just do naturally.
Exactly. And then there's environmental interference, like the electrical hum from power lines in the building, 50 or 60 hertz noise. Even nearby electrical equipment can interfere.
So it's like trying to record a whisper next to a construction site.
That's a good way to think about it. If these artifacts aren't meticulously removed, they can introduce significant inaccuracies. They can completely overwhelm the subtle brain signals we're actually interested in, potentially leading to misclassification and totally unreliable results.
So pre-processing isn't just nice to have, it's absolutely imperative.
Absolutely. It's like bringing in a top-notch audio engineer to clean up a noisy recording before you try to analyze the music.
Yeah.
You have to isolate the signal from the noise.
Okay, so how do they actually clean it up? What were the specific filtering steps they applied to ensure they were isolating the brain's symphony?
The researchers employed a rigorous, multi-step filtering process to achieve that pristine data. First, they used baseline artifact removal. This step is vital because EEG signals can sometimes drift slowly over time, due to things like slow changes in electrode contact with the scalp or skin potential changes.
Like the signal slowly wandering up or down.
Exactly. This drift, or temporal shift, can obscure the true brain activity, so removing it ensures a stable and accurate baseline for analysis, like zeroing out a scale before you weigh something.
Okay, baseline corrected. What's next?
Second, a 50 hertz notch filter was applied.
Ah, to get rid of that electrical hum you mentioned.
Precisely. If you've ever plugged in an old amplifier or listened to a radio with static, you might hear that low, persistent hum. Our brains and the electrodes picking up their signals act like tiny antennas, picking up this invisible hum from the mains power supply. 50 hertz in Europe, many places, 60 hertz in North America. The study used datasets likely recorded in 50 hertz environments.
So the notch filter cuts out just that specific frequency.
Exactly. It's like a highly specialized noise-canceling headphone for brain signals, precisely removing that specific hum frequency, ensuring we're listening to the brain's activity, not the building's electrical buzz.
Makes sense. And the third main filtering step.
Finally, they use a bandpass filter with a frequency range set between 0.2 hertz and 45 hertz. This filter is essential for removing any unwanted frequency components that fall outside the typical range of meaningful brain activity for this kind of analysis.
Why those specific cutoffs? 0.2 hertz and 45 hertz.
The lower cutoff at 0.2 hertz helps remove very slow DC offset or extremely slow physiological drifts, which aren't typically considered indicative of the neural activity relevant here. The upper cutoff at 45 hertz effectively removes higher frequencies. These are often dominated by muscle artifacts like subtle facial muscle tension, eye flutter, or even chewing, which generate electrical signals much stronger and faster than brain waves. It also helps cut out other high-frequency environmental noise. So this bandpass filter essentially carves out the precise frequency window where most meaningful brain activity for schizophrenia detection resides.
Okay, filtering sounds crucial. And what about segmentation? You mentioned dividing the continuous data into smaller chunks. Why is that important? Especially for the Poland dataset, DS2, which was smaller to begin with, it feels a bit counterintuitive to break up the data stream.
That's a really great question, and it highlights a critical step for preparing data for AI models, especially time series data like EEG. Segmentation is crucial for a couple of main reasons: achieving statistical consistency within each chunk and creating a sufficient number of samples for the machine learning algorithm to learn from effectively.
So consistency and more samples. How does that work?
Right. Segmentation involves dividing the continuous EEG signal, like that 15-minute recording from DS2, into equal-length, more statistically homogeneous segments. Each segment is designed to have relatively consistent statistical characteristics within its duration.
Why not just feed the whole 15-minute recording into the AI? What's the risk if they didn't segment?
If you were to feed a very long, continuous stream of EEG data into an AI, the model might really struggle to identify consistent patterns. Because the brain's activity naturally fluctuates over that kind of time scale. Alertness changes, focus shifts, maybe the person gets drowsy.
The signal isn't stationary.
Exactly. It's non-stationary over longer periods. By segmenting, you create many shorter, more uniform snapshots of brain activity within which the statistics are more likely to be stable.
And this was especially important for DS2.
Yes, particularly important for DS2, the Poland dataset, due to its relatively smaller number of subjects, only 28. Each 15-minute recording from DS2 is segmented into 25-second chunks. This process dramatically increased the number of data points they could work with. It yielded a substantial total of 1,142 individual EEG patterns, or segments.
From just 28 people's recordings.
Yes. 516 segments from the healthy controls, and 626 from the schizophrenia patients. By segmenting, they effectively multiplied their usable data, creating a much larger, more manageable, and statistically more consistent pool of data for the model to learn from.
So it made the most of the available data.
Absolutely. Each 25-second segment acts as an independent training example, which significantly improves the model's ability to learn robust patterns and generalize better.
Okay, so the signals are squeaky clean now, thanks to preprocessing. They're segmented into these digestible, statistically consistent 25-second chunks, for DS2 at least. Now we get to the DWT part of DWT-MLP. The Discrete Wavelet Transform. This is all about feature extraction. This is where they identify the actual meaningful information, the signatures from those electrical signals. Why is DWT so ideal for this, especially given that brainwaves are so dynamic?
What makes DWT uniquely ideal for EEG analysis is precisely the nature of EEG signals themselves. As we just discussed, they're non-stationary. Their statistical properties, average amplitude, variability, frequency content are constantly changing over time.
Unlike a simple, steady signal.
Exactly. If you think about a traditional technique like the Fourier transform, it's great for analyzing signals that are static or stationary, like a single, sustained musical note. It tells you what frequencies are present overall.
But not when they occurred.
Right. But EEG is much more like that constantly evolving symphony with rapid changes, brief events, transient spikes. Traditional analysis methods struggle with these shifting patterns because they average things out over time. DWT, however, is perfectly suited because it provides what's called time-frequency localization.
Time-frequency localization. Meaning?
Meaning it can extract transient and localized information in both the time domain, when something happens, and the frequency domain, what frequencies are involved, simultaneously. It allows you to see not just that there was, say, some alpha activity, but precisely when that burst of alpha occurred and how long it lasted within the signal segment.
So it keeps the timing information that Fourier analysis often loses.
Precisely. Think of it like being able to analyze that musical piece, not just by its overall melody and the average volume of each instrument, but also by precisely how the individual instruments play their notes at specific moments, their attack, decay, sustain, release, and how their sounds interact in fleeting harmonies or discords. DWT breaks down the signal into components that reveal both the global patterns and these very brief, localized events, which can be crucial for detecting abnormalities.
That's a fantastic analogy. So how does this musical deconstruction actually work with DWT? What's happening mathematically behind the scenes to break down these complex brain signals?
Conceptually, DWT works by recursively decomposing the EEG signal into distinct frequency bands. It does this by passing the signal through a pair of carefully designed digital filters, a high-pass filter and low-pass filter.
Okay, high-pass and low-pass, what do they capture?
The high-pass filter captures the detail coefficients, often denoted as D. These represent the higher frequency components, the faster oscillations, often associated with rapid changes and transient events in the brain signal. Meanwhile, the low-pass filter produces approximation coefficients, denoted A. These represent the lower frequency, broader trends, or the overall background rhythm of the signal at that stage.
So you get details and approximations, then what?
After the first pass, you have the first level of detail, D1, and approximation, A1. Then, crucially, the approximation coefficients, A1, are fed back into another, identical pair of high-pass and low-pass filters. This gives you the next level of detail, D2, and the next level of approximation, A2.
Ah, so it's iterative. You keep breaking down the approximation part.
Exactly. This iterative process is repeated across multiple decomposition levels. Each level effectively breaks down the signal further, isolating narrower and narrower frequency bands. So you end up with a set of detail coefficients for each level, D1, D2, D3, up to the chosen level, plus one final set of approximation coefficients, n, where n is the number of levels. This gives you a detailed map of the brain's activity across different frequencies and over time within the segment.
And this decomposition sounds like it involves some really critical choices. You mentioned earlier the mother wavelet and the decomposition level. Why does choosing the right one of each matter so much in getting accurate results? It seems like there's a lot of art as well as science here.
You've hit on a crucial point about the art in signal processing. Choosing the right mother wavelet is absolutely critical. Think of it like selecting the perfect lens for a camera, depending on whether you want a wide-angle shot or a detailed close-up, or choosing the right scientific instrument to measure a specific phenomenon.
So the mother wavelet defines how the signal is analyzed.
Yes. The mother wavelet is the basic finite-length waveform, the mathematical function, that's used for the decomposition. It determines how the signal is broken down at each step. Different mother wavelets have different shapes and mathematical properties, like symmetry, smoothness, vanishing moments, and because of these differences, they will yield different sets of DWT coefficients from the exact same EEG segment.
Leading to potentially different results in the end.
Potentially very different detection outcomes, yes. Some wavelets might be better at capturing sharp transients, others better at representing smooth oscillations. The study recognized this critical dependency and explored a wide range of 6 different families of mother wavelets to find the optimal fit for EEG data in this context.
Which families did they test?
They tested discrete Meyer, DME, Dubakey's DB, Simlets, Simonias Sim, Biorthogonal Bayer, Quaiflets, Quaif, and the simplest one, Hare. Each has its known strengths and weaknesses for different signal types.
Okay, so choosing the mother wavelet is step 1. What about the number of decomposition levels? Why does that matter?
That's equally important. The number of decomposition levels determines how finely the signal is broken down into frequency subbands. Each level in the DWT corresponds to a particular frequency band, with higher levels generally corresponding to lower frequencies, because you keep filtering the low-pass output.
So more levels means finer frequency detail.
Exactly. Higher levels offer finer frequency resolution, allowing for the analysis of very narrow frequency ranges within the broader EEG spectrum, like separating low alpha from high alpha, for example. But there's a trade-off. Going to very high decomposition levels can introduce redundancy between the coefficients. It also significantly increases the computational cost and the number of features you generate.
So you need to find the sweet spot.
Precisely. You need enough levels to adequately cover the physiologically relevant frequency bands, but not so many that you create unnecessary complexity or noise. The researchers, through rigorous experimentation, found that a 7-level decomposition was optimal for their purpose.
Why 7 levels specifically?
This specific number was critical because it effectively allowed them to capture and analyze signals corresponding to all 5 key EEG frequency bands we discussed earlier, delta, theta, alpha, beta, and gamma, which are known to be important in disease detection. It allowed them to extract features from the full physiologically relevant spectrum without going into excessive, potentially noisy detail.
Okay, so out of all those options, the different mother wavelet families, the number of levels, what was the best setting they found? The combination that yielded the most effective feature extraction for distinguishing schizophrenia.
The key finding, and a truly significant one in terms of optimizing their system, was clear and consistent across both datasets. The Dabashi's family, specifically the DB4 mother wavelet, used with a 7-level decomposition, consistently performed the best.
DB4 at 7 levels.
Yes. This particular combination proved most effective at extracting the relevant and discriminant information from these complex, non-stationary EEG signals. It provided the cleanest and most informative features for the next stage of the analysis, the MLP classifier.
Why might DB4 be good for this?
The DB4 wavelet is quite popular in biomedical signal processing. It's known for having a good balance between smoothness, which helps reduce noise sensitivity, and the ability to capture transient events reasonably well. It's a solid, well-rounded choice.
All right, they've used the optimal DB4 wavelet at 7 levels to thoroughly decompose the signal into these subbands. D1, D7, and A7. Now, from all that rich, decomposed data, how do they pick out the actual nuggets of information? The specific, most useful features that truly differentiate a healthy brain pattern from one affected by schizophrenia. Because I imagine even after decomposition, there's still a lot of data in those coefficients.
Oh, absolutely. Even after the sophisticated DWT decomposition, there's still a wealth of potential information contained within those detail and approximation coefficients for each channel. So the next step was to calculate a range of statistical features from each of these decomposed subbands. From each band, D1 through D7 plus A7, an initial set of 22 distinct features were extracted per channel, per segment trial.
22 features from each band. What kind of features?
And a pretty comprehensive set of statistical measures. Things like mean, median, minimum value, maximum value, standard deviation, variance, kurtosis, which measures the peakiness of the distribution, skewness, measuring asymmetry, also various quartiles, interquartile range, root mean square RMS value, and different types of entropy, like Shannon entropy, log energy entropy, which quantify the signal's complexity or predictability.
Wow, that's a substantial amount of potential information per band. Multiply that by 8 bands and 10 or 19 channels. That's hundreds or thousands of initial features per sample.
Exactly. It's a huge initial feature space, but not all of that information will be equally useful or discriminatory for telling SD apart from HC. Some features might be redundant, others might just be noise.
So they need a way to filter it down, select the best one.
Precisely. To refine this massive initial set and select only the most relevant nuggets, they employed a powerful statistical technique called the Kruskal-Wallis KW test.
Kruskal-Wallis test, what does that do?
Think of the KW test as a rigorous relevance checker, or a feature filter. It's a statistical method used to determine if there are significant differences between two or more groups, in this case SC versus HC, on a particular variable or extracted features. Crucially, it's a non-parametric method.
Non-parametric meaning?
Meaning it doesn't assume that our brain data perfectly fits a neat, predictable mathematical pattern, like a bell curve, a Gaussian distribution. This makes it super flexible and well-suited for complex, often messy, real biological signals like EEG, which rarely conform to those ideal assumptions. Essentially, the KW test helped them identify which of those initial 22 features showed a statistically significant difference between the healthy control group and the schizophrenia patient group.
So it ranks the features by how well they separate the groups.
In effect, yes. It determines which features have the strongest discrimination ability, meaning they reliably help tell the two groups apart. This step is absolutely crucial for reducing redundancy where multiple features carry similar information, and for optimizing the subsequent classification process. It ensures the MLP model only learns from the most potent, most informative indicators, cutting out this statistical noise.
So after applying that rigorous Kruskal-Wallis relevance checker and sifting through those 22 initial features per band, how many actually made the final cut? And perhaps even more importantly, why are those specific features so effective? What do they physiologically tell us about the brain in schizophrenia that makes them such powerful indicators?
After the rigorous KW test analysis, the researchers identified and selected just 5 features as being the most consistently discriminative across the subbands and datasets. And these were remarkably simple, yet incredibly powerful basic statistical measures. The mean, the minimum value, the maximum value, the variance, and the standard deviation of the EEG signal within each decomposed frequency band, D1, D7, and A7.
Just those 5. Mean, min, max, variance, standard deviation. That seems almost too simple after all that complex processing.
It does seem simple on the surface, but what's truly fascinating here is why these 5 specific features are so powerful and critically physiologically relevant for diagnosing schizophrenia. It's not just about the presence or absence of certain brain activity patterns. It's also very much about the consistency, the stability, and the extremes of that activity that reveal the critical insights.
Okay, let's break down their physiological relevance. Why the mean?
The mean EEG amplitude within a band reflects the average level of electrical activity in that frequency range. Changes in this average activity, either increases or decreases compared to healthy controls, are often directly associated with cognitive impairments and aspects of psychosis. An area showing consistently lower or higher mean activity might indicate foundational issues in its information processing capacity.
Makes sense. What about variance and standard deviation? They measure spread, right?
Exactly. Variance and standard deviation quantify the signal dispersion or variability. They aren't just dry statistical terms. They tell us how much the brain signal jitters or spreads out from its average value within that band, how stable or unstable is the rhythm.
And that's different in schizophrenia.
Often, yes. Increased neural variability, more jitter or inconsistency, is increasingly recognized as a potential marker in schizophrenia. Think of it like the brain's baseline rhythm, instead of being a steady, predictable beat, is constantly fluctuating unpredictably.
Like more static or disorganization in the signal?
Precisely. This increased variability, this internal static or disorganization, is thought to be a direct signature of the disrupted neural coordination and communication observed in the condition. This disruption has been directly linked to profound cognitive dysfunction problems with attention, working memory, executive function, and even the experience of hallucinations. It's about spotting a lack of internal harmony or excessive noise in the brain's communication channels.
Okay, that's really insightful. And finally, the minimum and maximum values, the extremes.
The minimum and maximum values highlight the extreme fluctuations in the EEG signal within each segment and band. Think of them as capturing the brain hitting its extreme high and low notes, maybe sudden, transient bursts of unusually high activity, maximum, or brief dips into unusually low activity, minimum.
Are these extremes just random noise?
Not necessarily. These extreme values are thought to be linked to transient periods of hyper or hypoactivity in specific cortical regions. These brief abnormal fluctuations might represent moments of aberrant neural firing or temporary short circuits that could directly contribute to the manifestation of acute psychotic symptoms like hallucinations or delusions.
Wow, so these 5 seemingly simple statistics are actually capturing really fundamental aspects of brain function in schizophrenia: average activity level, signal stability variability, and extreme events.
Exactly. They provide a concise yet powerful statistical summary of the key dynamic properties of the EEG signal within each frequency band, properties that appear to be significantly altered in schizophrenia.
That's incredibly insightful. It's clear it's not just arbitrary numbers. They directly relate to what we understand about the disease on a physiological level. Now, can you give us a sense of the sheer volume of data, the feature set size that's being generated from these 5 features across all bands and channels? What's actually being fed into the next stage, the classifier? It sounds like an enormous amount of highly refined information.
You're absolutely right. The amount of detailed, highly refined information being extracted and then fed into the AI is truly impressive. It really illustrates the computational scale of this approach, even after selecting just 5 features per band. Let's break it down for each dataset. For dataset 1, DS1. Remember, they focused on 10 specific EEG channels for this one. From each channel, after the 7-level DWT decomposition, they have 8 resulting subbands, D1, D7, plus the final approximation A7. From each of these 8 subbands, they extracted those 5 most discriminative features: mean, min, max, variance, STD, dev. So for a single 3-second trial from one subject, the total number of features is 10 channels, 8 decomposition levels bands, x 5 features per band, equal to 400 features.
400 numbers representing just 3 seconds of brain activity from 10 spots.
Exactly. Now consider the total scale of DS1. It had 7,836 total trials, 301 from healthy controls, 4,728 from schizophrenia patients. This means the combined feature set that the classifier ultimately has to learn from is a massive matrix with dimensions of 700 and 836 trials x 400 features. That's over 3 million data points just for DS1's features.
Wow. Okay, what about DS2? It had more channels but fewer subject segments.
Right. For dataset 2, DS2, this dataset used 19 EEG channels. Following the same logic, from each 25-second segment, they extracted 19 channels, x8 decomposition levels bands, x5 features per band, even more features per sample because of the extra channel.
Yes, 760 features characterizing each 25-second segment. DS2 had a total of 1,142 segments, 516 HC, 626 SZ. So the combined feature set for DS2 is a matrix of 1,142 segments x 760 features. That's close to 900,000 data points. Incredible. So for both data sets, we're talking about hundreds of features per sample and thousands of samples overall. What's fascinating here is how much detailed, relevant information they're able to distill from these seemingly chaotic brainwave patterns into these structured feature sets.
Absolutely. This comprehensive yet highly targeted feature set is what provides the deep learning model, the MLP, with the granular insights it needs to make those highly accurate distinctions between SC and HC. It really highlights the computational effort involved. Each one of those numbers in those huge matrices represents a carefully derived nugget of information about the brain's electrical activity, ready for the AI to analyze.
Incredible. Okay, so now we have these massive, highly refined feature sets, these distinct numerical signatures of brain activity. Let's finally talk about the MLP part of DWT-MLP, the multi-layer perceptron classifier. This is essentially the brain of their system, the AI that learns to interpret these patterns and make the diagnosis right. What exactly is an MLP in simple terms, and how does it go about making sense of all this complex feature data?
Exactly. The MLP is the classification engine, the part that learns the mapping from the features to the diagnosis. In simple terms, an MLP, a multi-layer perceptron, is a type of feed-forward neural network. It's really one of the foundational architectures in the broader field of deep learning.
Feed-forward neural network.
Yeah, imagine it as a series of interconnected layers of computational nodes, often called neurons, though they're just mathematical functions. Information flows in one direction, hence feed forward from an input layer through one or more hidden layers where the computation happens to an output layer that gives the final result.
So it's like a simplified mathematical version of how biological neurons might process information in stages.
That was the original inspiration, yes, although modern MLPs are purely mathematical constructs. They're designed to learn incredibly complex patterns and nonlinear relationships within data, far beyond what simple statistical models or linear classifiers can achieve. They essentially map the input features, our 400 or 760 EEG features, to the desired outputs, SE or HC, through a process of learning sophisticated mathematical transformations within those hidden layers.
Okay, so how does it work specifically with these EEG features? Walk us through the workflow inside the MLP. What allows it to take that big vector of 400 or 760 numbers and classify it as either schizophrenic or healthy?
The MLP workflow is quite structured and optimized for precision. First, before the extracted features, that big vector of numbers, are even fed into the network's input layer, they undergo a crucial preliminary step called normalization.
Normalization, why is that needed?
It's vital because different features might have vastly different numerical ranges. For instance, the mean amplitude might be a small number, like 5 microvolts, while the variance could be much larger, maybe 100 microvolts squared. If you fed these raw features directly into the MLP, the features with larger numerical ranges could disproportionately influence the learning process. They essentially shout louder than other equally important features with smaller values.
So normalization puts them all on a level playing field.
Exactly. The study used z-score normalization. This method transforms each feature across all samples so that it has a mean of 0 and a standard deviation of 1. This ensures all features contribute more equally to the learning process and significantly improves the network's learning efficiency and overall performance.
Okay, features are normalized, then they go into the network.
Yes. These standardized features then enter the input layer of the MLP. The number of neurons in the input layer simply matches the number of features, so 400 for DS1, 760 for DS2. From there, the data flows sequentially through the hidden layers.
And the hidden layers are where the magic happens.
That's where the computational heavy lifting and the complex pattern recognition truly take place. The network learns to combine features, weigh their importance, and identify subtle, nonlinear relationships within the data that distinguish SZ from HC. It's not just looking at features in isolation, but how they interact.
And how many hidden layers did this study use?
This is a key design choice. After extensive experimentation and optimization detailed in their paper, Table 5, the researchers settled on an architecture with 4 hidden layers, with very specific numbers of neurons in each layer. 400 neurons in the first hidden layer, followed by 192 in the second, then 72 in the third, and finally 32 neurons in the fourth hidden layer.
400, 192, 72, 32.
Wow.
Why that specific funnel shape?
This tapering structure is quite common. It allows the network to gradually refine the representation of the data, moving from broad patterns in the early layers to more specific, abstract features relevant for classification in the later layers. This architecture was chosen because it provided the optimal balance between learning capacity, being complex enough to capture the patterns, and preventing issues like overfitting, where the model learns the training data noise too well.
Okay, input layer, 4 hidden layers, then the output.
Finally, the processed information, now a highly distilled representation, reaches the output layer. For a binary classification task like this, SC versus HC, the output layer typically consists of just a single neuron. This neuron uses an activation function, like sigmoid, to produce a value between 0 and 1, representing the probability of the input belonging to one class, for example, SC. A threshold, usually 0.5, is then used to make the final binary decision.
So it's not just a simple linear calculation through these layers, is it? There's something about nonlinearity involved. You mentioned activation functions like ReLU earlier. Why are those functions so incredibly important? What makes the MLP capable of handling the complex nuances of brain signals?
That's an absolutely key point, and it's where a lot of the power of deep learning, even in relatively simple architectures like MLP, comes from. Without these nonlinear activation functions applied after the computations in each hidden layer neuron, the entire MLP, no matter how many layers deep, would mathematically collapse into just a single, equivalent linear transformation.
Really? So adding more layers wouldn't help without them.
Exactly. It would just be a linear model, meaning it could only learn to identify straight line relationships, or draw straight lines, or flat planes in higher dimensions to separate the data points.
Like trying to separate a spiral pattern with just a straight cut.
Perfect analogy. You can't do it accurately. You'd get a very crude approximation at best. But brain patterns, biological data in general, are incredibly intricate. They're often messy, full of complex curves, subtle nuances, and highly nonlinear interactions between different measurements. An activation function like the rectified linear unit, or ReLU, introduces that critical nonlinearity into the network.
What does ReLU do?
ReLU is actually mathematically very simple. It outputs the input directly if it's positive, and outputs 0 if the input is negative. So output max 0 input. This simple function, applied to the output of each neuron in the hidden layers, allows the network to effectively bend and curve its decision boundaries in the high-dimensional feature space.
So it can learn those complex, squiggly separations.
Precisely. Instead of drawing only straight lines, ReLU and other nonlinear functions enables the network to model those complex, intricate relationships within the EEG features that differentiate SZ from HEC. This greatly enhances its ability to capture the true underlying patterns and, crucially, to generalize well to new, unseen data. It's what gives the AI the power to move beyond simple distinctions and grasp the full complexity of biological signals.
This all sounds incredibly sophisticated and, frankly, computationally intensive. What kind of hardware and software were needed to actually bring this DWT MLP system to life, to process all that data and train such a complex model?
You're absolutely right. While the conceptual elegance of the DWT MLP system is clear, its execution definitely demands significant computational power and specialized tools, particularly for the deep learning part. For the initial stages, the signal analysis, the DWT feature extraction, and that crucial Kruskal-Wallis feature selection process, the researchers primarily relied on MATLAB R2023A. This was run on a fairly standard Windows 10 system equipped with an Intel Core i3 processor and 8 gigabytes of RAM. MATLAB is a very powerful environment, well-suited for numerical computing and signal processing tasks like these.
Okay, so the signal processing part was manageable on standard hardware.
Right.
What about training the MLP?
Ah, yes. The more computationally demanding part, the training and testing of the multi-layer perceptron deep learning architecture itself, required much more robust resources. This was conducted using Python 3.11.2, which is the dominant language in AI development today, along with standard libraries like TensorFlow or PyTorch. The paper doesn't specify which library, but likely one of those. And critically, this Python code was run on an NVIDIA RTX A6000 workstation.
An RTX A6000. That's a serious piece of hardware, isn't it?
It absolutely is. It's a high-end professional GPU graphics processing unit. The key spec here is that it's equipped with a hefty 48 GB of dedicated GPU RAM.
48 gigs of RAM just on the graphics card. Why is that needed?
GPUs are absolutely essential for training deep learning models efficiently. They are designed for massive parallel processing, performing thousands of simple calculations simultaneously. Training a neural network involves countless matrix multiplications and other operations across all the data samples and network parameters. GPUs can perform these parallel computations far, far faster than standard CPUs, central processing units. The large amount of GPU RAM, like the 48 GB on the A6000, is needed to hold the model's parameters, the input data batches, and the intermediate calculations during training without constantly swapping data back and forth to the slower system RAM.
So it really highlights the computational effort behind achieving these results.
It does, especially when working with deep learning models and large, high-dimensional datasets like these feature matrices. You need powerful engines, primarily high-end GPUs, to drive these intelligent systems and train them in a reasonable amount of time.
All right, we've thoroughly covered the how, the meticulous methodology, the data, the DWT, the MLP, the hardware. Now let's pivot to the truly incredible results this system achieved. This is the payoff. But before we get to the headline accuracy numbers, how did they ensure the model was thoroughly fine-tuned and robust? What steps did they take to make absolutely sure these weren't just lucky fluke results on these specific data sets? How reliable are these findings?
That's a critical question in any AI study, especially in medicine. Ensuring robustness and reliability is paramount. The researchers took several key steps here. First, as we discussed, the meticulous pre-processing and parameter selection. They reiterated the precision of their chosen filters, 50 Hz notch, 0.245 Hz bandpass. These weren't arbitrary. They were selected to yield the cleanest possible data, forming a solid foundation. Similarly, the extensive testing to find the optimal DWT parameters that DB4 mother wavelet with 7-level decomposition. They confirmed this combination consistently delivered the best performance across both distinct datasets. This cross-dataset consistency strongly suggests it wasn't a fluke.
Okay, clean data, optimal feature extraction. What about the MLP tuning?
Right. They rigorously tested different MLP architectures, specifically varying the number of hidden layers and the number of neurons within those layers. Their results, detailed in Table 5 of the paper, showed that using 4 hidden layers provided the optimal balance.
What happened with fewer or more layers?
Using fewer layers resulted in lower accuracy. The network simply couldn't learn enough complexity from the features. Using too many layers, while potentially more powerful in theory, led to diminishing returns in accuracy, significantly increased the computational cost, training time, and crucially, increased the risk of overfitting.
Overfitting again. Remind us what that is.
Overfitting is when the model learns the training data too well, including its specific noise and random fluctuations, rather than the true underlying patterns. An overfitted model performs brilliantly on the data it was trained on, but then performs poorly when it encounters new unseen data because it hasn't learned to generalize. Finding that sweet spot architecture helps prevent this.
Makes sense. What else contributed to robustness? The data splitting.
Yes, their data splitting strategy was very important and followed standard best practices for robust evaluation. They partitioned the entire dataset into 3 distinct non-overlapping parts. 70% for training the model, this is the data that MLP actually learns the patterns from. 10% for validation, this smaller set is used during the training process to tune hyperparameters, like the learning rate, or deciding when to stop training to prevent overfitting. The model sees this data, but doesn't directly learn from its labels in the same way as the training set. And the remaining 20% for testing this chunk is kept completely separate and unseen by the model throughout the entire training and validation process. It's used only once at the very end to get an unbiased, true evaluation of the model's performance on brand new data.
So the 20% test set gives the real measure of how well it would work in practice.
Exactly. It simulates encountering new patients. And furthermore, specifically for the smaller DS2 dataset, they employed 5-fold cross-validation.
How does 5-fold cross-validation work?
It's a technique to get a more reliable performance estimate when you have limited data. You divide the data into 5 equal parts, or folds. Then you train the model 5 separate times. Each time you train on 4 of the folds and test on the remaining 1 fold that was held out. So every part of the data gets used for testing exactly once. The final performance is then the average across all 5 folds.
That sounds much more robust than just a single 7001020 split, especially with only 28 subjects in DS2.
It absolutely is. It ensures that the results aren't just a fluke based on one particular way of splitting the limited data. This level of methodological rigor is really crucial for building confidence in the findings, especially in medical AI research.
Okay, this sounds incredibly thorough and scientifically sound. They really dotted their I's and crossed their T's on the validation. So, with all that meticulous fine-tuning, optimal parameter selection, rigorous pre-processing, and robust testing, let's get to it. What were the headline numbers? What kind of unprecedented accuracy did this DWT MLP system achieve in detecting schizophrenia from these EEG signals? You said earlier this is where it gets truly astonishing.
The numbers are indeed remarkable, especially when you consider the inherent complexity and subtlety of diagnosing schizophrenia based on brain signals. The model's performance was evaluated using those 4 key standard metrics that are crucial in medical AI: accuracy, specificity, sensitivity, also called recall, and precision.
Remind us briefly what each one means in this context. Accuracy is overall correctness.
Right. Accuracy is the overall percentage of correct predictions, how often the model got it right, whether labeling someone as SZ or HC. Sensitivity, or recall, measures how well the model correctly identifies the true positives. So out of all the people who actually had schizophrenia in the dataset, what percentage did the model correctly identify? High sensitivity is vital. You don't want to miss cases. False negatives.
Okay. And specificity?
Specificity measures how well the model correctly identifies the true negatives. Out of all the healthy control individuals, what percentage did the model correctly identify as healthy? High specificity is also vital. You don't want to wrongly diagnose someone who is healthy. False positive.
Got it. And precision.
Precision tells you, out of all the times the model predicted someone had schizophrenia, the positive predictions, what proportion of those predictions were actually correct. It measures the reliability of a positive prediction.
Okay, metrics clear. What were the results? The headline numbers.
Prepare to be impressed. For dataset 1, the larger Kaggle dataset, the DWT-MLP system achieved a groundbreaking accuracy of 99.61%.
99.61%. That's almost perfect.
It's exceptionally high, yes. And for dataset 2, the smaller, balanced Poland dataset, it reached an equally impressive accuracy of 99.12%.
Wow. Consistently over 99% on two different datasets with different characteristics. That's incredible. Can you give us the full breakdown, the specificity, sensitivity, and precision for both so our listeners can really appreciate the breadth of this success?
Certainly. Let's look at the detailed metrics. For DS1, Kaggle dataset, accuracy 0.996 or 99.61%. Specificity, both 7995, meaning 99.5% of healthy controls were correctly identified. Sensitivity, recall, 0.996, meaning 99.6% of SZ patients were correctly identified. Precision, 0.995, meaning 99.5% of the patients the model flagged as SZ actually had SZ.
So, extremely balanced performance on DS1. Very few errors of either type, false positives or false negatives.
Exactly. An incredibly low error rate overall. Now for DS2, Poland dataset, using the five-fold cross-validation results, accuracy, 0.991 or 99.12%, specificity, 0.980, 98.0% of healthy controls correctly identified. Sensitivity, recall, a perfect 1,000, meaning the model correctly identified every single SZ patient in that dataset across the cross-validation folds. Precision, 0.984. 98.4% of the positive predictions were correct.
Perfect sensitivity on DS2. It didn't miss a single case of schizophrenia in that dataset.
According to their reported cross-validation results, yes, it achieved 100% sensitivity. The specificity was slightly lower than DS1 at 98%, meaning it made slightly more false positive errors on DS2, but still exceptionally high performance overall.
These are just astounding numbers, particularly for a condition like schizophrenia where diagnosis can be so challenging and nuanced using traditional methods.
They really are. Achieving over 99% accuracy with very high sensitivity and specificity on multiple diverse datasets signifies a very low rate of both false positives and false negatives. This is paramount in a clinical diagnostic setting where every misstep can have profound implications for a patient's treatment, well-being, and life trajectory.
Absolutely. But let's talk about the practical side again. Is this remarkably high accuracy achieved at the cost of, say, taking hours to run the test on a new patient? How computationally efficient is this DWT-MLP system in practice? Could it actually be used in a busy clinic?
That's a very practical and critical question for translating any AI research into real-world clinical application. Speed matters. Fortunately, the study demonstrates that this high accuracy is achieved with quite reasonable computational costs, particularly during the testing phase, predicting on new data, suggesting it could indeed be viable for practical deployment.
All right, what were the times?
For DS1, the larger dataset, the model took approximately 65.57 seconds to train on that powerful NVIDIA GPU. That's just over a minute to learn the patterns from thousands of samples. But crucially, the testing time, the time to process a new, unseen trial and make a prediction, was a mere 3.48 seconds.
Under 4 seconds for a prediction on DS1. That's fast.
Very fast. And for DS2, the smaller dataset, the times were even quicker. Training time was about 22.42 seconds, and the testing time per segment was lightning fast. Only 0.38 seconds.
Less than half a second for a prediction on DS2.
Exactly. This demonstrates that once the model is trained, which only needs to be done once offline, it can provide a diagnostic assessment almost instantaneously when presented with new EEG data from a patient.
What about memory usage? Did it need that huge 48 GB GPU just to run a prediction?
No. The memory usage reported was the peak usage during the most intensive phases, likely training. They reported peaks of around 3.3 GBP for DS1 and 5.5 GBP for DS2. This suggests that running the trained model for prediction, inference, would likely require significantly less memory, potentially making it deployable on less powerful hardware than the high-end GPU used for training.
So the combination of extremely high accuracy paired with this level of efficiency, especially in testing time, makes it a very compelling potential solution for clinical use.
It really does. It suggests feasibility. And just to round out the technical rigor, they also meticulously detailed the specific hyperparameters used for training the MLP. This is vital for reproducibility, allowing other researchers to replicate their results.
What kind of hyperparameters did they specify?
They mentioned things like batch size, 32, meaning the model processed 32 data samples at a time during each training step. Learning rate, 0.001, a common value controlling how much the model adjusts its internal weights during learning. Optimizer, Atom, a very popular and efficient algorithm for training neural networks. Random seed, 42. Setting this ensures that the random initializations of the network weights are the same every time the code is run, making the results repeatable. Loss function. Binary cross-entropy, the standard mathematical function used to measure the error for binary classification tasks like this, guiding the learning process.
Providing all those details really demonstrates the scientific rigor and allows others to build upon their work.
Absolutely. It's a hallmark of good scientific practice in AI research.
Okay, so the DW2 MLP system performs incredibly well on its own merits: high accuracy, efficiency, robustness. But how does it stack up against other cutting-edge approaches in this specific field? Did this research truly surpass the current state-of-the-art in automated schizophrenia diagnosis using EEG?
This is where the study makes a particularly strong case for its significance and novelty. The researchers didn't just report their own results in isolation and call it a day. They performed an extensive comparative study, systematically pitting their DWT MLP model against numerous existing state-of-the-art techniques that have been published in peer-reviewed journals in recent years.
So they compared it directly to the competition.
Exactly. They looked at a wide array of sophisticated methods published by other research groups. These involved combining different advanced signal processing techniques.
Like what?
Things like empirical mode decomposition, EMD, and its variants, MMD, RVMD, different types of wavelet transforms, FTQWT, WST, Fourier-based methods converting signals to images like GAF and others. And these different feature extraction approaches were then paired with a diverse range of machine learning and deep learning classifiers.
Which classifiers did the other studies use?
A real spectrum. Traditional ones like support vector machines, SVM, and random forest, RF. Ensemble methods like ensemble bagging trees, EBT. Specialized ones like extreme learning machines, OELM, and fuzzy least squares, SVM, FLS-SVM. And also more complex, modern deep learning architectures like convolutional neural networks, CNN, vision transformers, Levi, and even graph convolutional networks, GCN, adapted for EEG signals.
So a really comprehensive comparison against a lot of different strategies. What was the outcome?
The results, as presented in their comparison table, Table 6, were quite unequivocal. The proposed DWT-MLP model outperformed all these existing state-of-the-art approaches on both datasets, often by significant margins in terms of accuracy.
Really outperformed all of them. Can you give a few concrete examples?
Sure. Let's look at DS1, Kaggle. Some previous methods cited, like Siu et al., 2020, achieved about 89.59% accuracy. The DWT MLP hit 99.61%. That's a nearly 10% jump in accuracy over that specific prior work. Now look at DS2, Poland. Christian et al., 2020, reached 93.00% accuracy. More recently, Tahud et al., 2023, achieved a very high 99.05% using a complex CNN approach, and Lead et al., 2023, got 98.99% using graph convolutional networks.
So some recent methods were getting very close, around 99%.
Extremely close, yes, but the DWT MLP still edged them out slightly on DS2 with 99.12% accuracy while maintaining that extremely high performance on DS1 as well, consistently achieving 99% accuracy across both datasets and outperforming or matching the very best results from much more complex recent models is a major achievement.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, this isn't just another small incremental improvement. It really feels like a significant leap forward in the capability of AI to assist in this complex diagnosis.
I think that's a fair assessment. When you see consistent performance at this level, surpassing a wide range of previous attempts, it suggests the methodology has captured something fundamental and effective about the underlying signal differences.
You mentioned earlier a potential simplicity advantage for their DWT MLP model, despite its superior performance. That's quite surprising, isn't it? Usually we think state-of-the-art requires more complexity.
It is indeed quite noteworthy, and it's a very important insight from this work. Despite its demonstrably superior performance, the core DWT-MLP model is characterized by its relative architectural simplicity compared to some of the much larger, more complex deep learning networks that others have recently applied to this problem. Think about models like vision transformers, Levite, or complex custom CNNs or GCNs. These often have millions, sometimes tens or hundreds of millions of trainable parameters. They can be incredibly powerful, but also very data hungry, computationally expensive to train, and often function like black boxes. It's hard to understand exactly why they make a particular decision.
Whereas the MLP here, while deep with 4 hidden layers, is still fundamentally simpler than those massive architectures.
Exactly. The real insight here, I think, is how a highly targeted, intelligent approach to feature engineering, deeply understanding the nature of EEG signals, and specifically extracting the most physiologically relevant statistical features using DWT when combined with a well-optimized but fundamentally less complex neural network like MLP, can actually outperform these far more complex end-to-end black box AI models.
So smart feature extraction was key.
It strongly suggests that the careful, knowledge-driven feature extraction using DWT was incredibly effective at isolating the critical information. The MLP then only needed sufficient capacity, the 4 hidden layers, to learn the patterns within those already highly informative features. It challenges the sometimes prevalent idea in AI that just throwing more data and a bigger, more complex model at a problem is always the best solution. Sometimes understanding your data deeply and applying elegant, well-tuned, simpler solutions is the path to superior performance and sophistication.
And that relative simplicity might have other advantages too.
Potentially, yes. Simpler models often require less data to train effectively. They usually have lower computational requirements for deployment in clinics, inference. And perhaps most importantly in medicine, simpler models can sometimes offer greater interpretability. While interpreting even MLPs isn't trivial, understanding the contribution of those 5 specific input features, mean, min, max, variance, SD, dev, might be more feasible than trying to decipher the internal workings of a billion-parameter transformer model.
Right, understanding why the AI made a decision can be almost as important as the decision itself in a clinical context.
Absolutely. Trust and understanding are crucial for clinical adoption. So this work shows that sometimes less complexity, when that less is incredibly well chosen and optimized based on domain knowledge, can truly be more effective.
That truly brings us towards the end of our deep dive into this fascinating and I think hugely impactful research. Let's just take a moment to recap the profound implications of this achievement and maybe look ahead to the future that this kind of technology could usher in.
Definitely. To summarize the core achievement, this study has undeniably shown that their proposed DWT MLP system has significantly improved the accuracy and effectiveness of schizophrenia diagnosis using EEG signals.
Yep.
By expertly combining discrete wavelet transform for that meticulous, physiologically informed feature extraction and a well-tuned multi-layer perceptron neural network for robust classification, they've boosted all the key performance parameters, accuracy, sensitivity, specificity, precision, to really unprecedented levels for this task. Consistently achieving over 99% accuracy across 2 distinct data sets is a major benchmark.
So this isn't just an interesting research paper sitting on a shelf. It feels like a tangible step towards potentially revolutionizing how we approach diagnosing a debilitating condition like schizophrenia.
I believe it represents exactly that, a significant step forward.
And specifically for schizophrenia diagnosis, the potential impact is huge, right? Offering the promise of earlier, more accurate, objective insights. It could mean reducing those agonizing wait times for diagnosis that patients currently face, minimizing the impact of human subjectivity and variability between clinicians, and maybe ensuring more consistent diagnostic criteria are applied worldwide.
All of those are potential benefits, yes. Providing clinicians with a powerful, objective tool to aid their assessment could have a massive impact on patient pathways and outcomes.
But the researchers also wisely hinted, as you mentioned, at broader applications beyond just schizophrenia. This methodology isn't necessarily limited to one condition.
That's one of the most exciting aspects, actually. The beauty and potential power of this approach lie in its generalizability. The core methodology combining sophisticated wavelet analysis for time-frequency feature extraction with a robust, deep learning classifier is not inherently specific only to the EEG patterns of schizophrenia.
So the same basic recipe could work for other conditions.
Potentially, yes, with appropriate tuning and validation, of course. The researchers explicitly suggest that this versatile framework can be further developed and adapted to identify a wide variety of other mental illnesses and neurological disorders. Any condition that manifests as distinct, measurable patterns or disruptions in brainwave activity recorded by EEG could potentially be a target.
Did they mention any specific examples?
They did. They specifically mentioned conditions like depression, anxiety, epilepsy, autism spectrum disorder, and Parkinson's disease as areas where this approach could be explored.
Wow, that's a huge range of conditions affecting millions more people.
It is. This is crucial because it indicates they might have developed a foundational framework, a core technological approach that could benefit a much wider range of patients and clinicians in the future. It could potentially accelerate diagnosis and understanding across a broad spectrum of challenging neurological and psychiatric conditions. Imagine a future where a similar EEG-AI system becomes a standard, non-invasive screening or diagnostic support tool for many of these issues.
So the so what for you, our listener, and for healthcare systems globally is potentially immense. This technology holds the promise of directly assisting clinicians in providing better, more timely treatment to patients through earlier, more accurate, and far more objective diagnoses. Imagine the countless lives that could be positively impacted, the suffering that could be alleviated or shortened, simply by getting a precise diagnosis much faster and more reliably than is often possible today.
It really shifts the paradigm, doesn't it? From potentially long periods of uncertainty, trial and error treatments, and reactive crisis management towards more proactive intervention based on objective biological markers, offering hope where there might have been a long, uncertain, and difficult journey.
It's about getting the right care to the right person at the right time, as you said earlier.
Precisely. It's about empowering clinicians and improving patient lives through smarter technology.
Indeed. And this leaves us with a truly provocative thought for you to consider as you go about your day. Something to mull over. Imagine a future, maybe not too far off, where a quick, non-invasive brain scan, perhaps an advanced version of the EEG analysis we've explored today, could provide an effective early warning system, an alert for a whole host of complex neurological and mental health conditions, enabling intervention years, maybe even decades, before severe, debilitating symptoms even begin to manifest.
Moving beyond diagnosis to prediction and prevention.
Exactly. What does this all mean for the future of preventative mental health care? How might it fundamentally transform how we approach well-being and brain health across the entire lifespan?
The possibilities are truly astounding to ponder. It could revolutionize how we understand and manage chronic neurological and mental health conditions.
Shifting the focus from reactive treatment of established illness towards proactive intervention, personalized support, and maybe even true prevention based on early biological signals.
A very exciting, hopeful prospect.
It really is. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating intersection of AI, brain science, and the future of mental health diagnostics. We hope you feel a little more informed, perhaps a little more inspired, and definitely a lot more curious about where this technology might take us. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.